Hi, I'm Marcia, and I'm going to show you how to make beef roly-poly tonight. This recipe is one that we've been cooking at our house almost since we got married, because I was going to school when I got engaged, and a guy in my class, when he heard that I was engaged, we didn't really know each other all that well, but anyway, he was selling a product on the side that was his side hustle, and it came with a cookbook, and so he gave me this little cookbook as a little wedding gift, and so that's where this recipe came from, and it's called beef roly-poly, and it has 3 steps, but they're all very easy, so we'll just go through it. The first step is we're gonna brown some ground beef, and I have here, it calls for 1 pound of ground beef, but I have probably about 1 1/4 pounds, because this was 2.5 pounds in the package, and I just cut it in half. So this is about 1.25 pounds of lean ground beef. If you're not using lean ground beef, when you get through browning this first stage, you're going to drain the fat off, because you want the ground beef to be mixture to be pretty dry. 1 teaspoon of salt to the ground beef. And I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of just regular black pepper. I'm gonna chop that in. Okay. And then the other ingredients for the ground beef step are about 1/2 cup of grated carrots and 1 medium onion. And then this is 2 eggs that are beaten, but we're going to leave those, we're going to set those aside. We're not going to brown that with this first step. I'll add in the onions. And the grated carrots. Now if you don't have carrots, or you want to use some other vegetable, you can. I think the original recipe said whatever vegetable you have on hand, and it suggested mushrooms. We don't really like mushrooms, but you could do celery and onions. You could do mushrooms, whatever you might have that you like, your kids like, whatever. But the main point is, whatever vegetable you put in here, you want it to be either diced pretty small, or like I said, the carrots are grated, and that way they'll get all cooked and it won't be lumpy when we're going to put this in a dough and roll it up cinnamon roll fashion, so you don't want big lumps of anything. So I'm going to finish browning this, and I'll be back when it gets mostly brown. Okay, this is mostly browned. You don't want to overcook this. It's going to bake in the oven, and so any of these steps, you don't want to overcook it. Okay, so I've got the carrots and onions in here, the salt and pepper, and the ground beef. And I'm gonna chop that up pretty good. Make sure there's no pink left to the meat, but it's pretty well cooked. Turn that off. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to take it off the heat and just stir it a little bit, and then I'm going to Got my eggs beaten here. I'm just gonna beat them up a little bit again to get them together. And I'm gonna pour this over the meat. We're gonna do this off the heat because you want the eggs to cook, but you don't really want to scramble them. So just the heat of the mixture will cook the eggs as much as you want it. And I see I have a little bit of moisture, more moisture down here than I really might want, so I'll probably get a spoon and drain that off. And I'm not gonna do that on camera here, but when you're at home, if you're cooking this, when it gets to this point and the egg gets mostly set and stuff, you probably want to taste the mixture, make sure you've got enough seasoning on it. If you're used to less salt, you can start out with less and then add more if you need to. So, okay, so that's the first step. Okay, this is step 2, and so we're gonna first, I'm gonna add baking powder. Now this is a dough, but it's a biscuit dough. It's not a yeast dough, so if you're scared away by yeast dough, you don't have to worry about that. And then I'll add in a teaspoon of salt, and I'll have a picture of the recipe after, so you don't have to write all this down. And then this is 2 tablespoons of sugar. And it's not really a sweet dough, but it just helps it out. So I'm gonna whisk those dry ingredients together to get them all combined. And then I'm gonna get my this is a 1/2 cup of vegetable shortening, sort like Crisco. And then I'm going to take my pastry blender and I'm going to cut this Crisco in. This is a really handy thing to have if you're making biscuits. If you don't have one of these dudes, you can still do it, because what you would do is you'd get your 2 butter knives and you crisscross them like this until it's done. But I'm gonna go ahead and use my pastry blender. So I'm just gonna chop away at this until there's no big hunks of Crisco left, and it's just kind of blended in. Okay, and at this point I'm going to add in a cup of milk. And I'm going to just kind of fold and stir this till it comes nicely together. If it's too dry, you can add a little bit more milk. If it's too wet, you can add a little bit more flour, but I usually find that the 1 cup, if you measure it correctly, comes out pretty much the way you're going to want it. I'll get all that off the spatula, and I'm going to go get my flour. I'm going to put flour on my surface. Out before my hands get too bad. Okay, so you notice I don't really have it all, it's not in a ball or anything yet. I'm just gonna dump it out on here Gonna knead it together a few times till it all comes together. So you don't want too much flour on your surface or it will make it too dry. So just spread a little dusting on there. And just kind of work all those crumblies in. They will work in. Now it's starting to come together like a dough now, like a biscuit dough. Yes, I washed my hands before I started this. Put a little bit on my rolling pin. This was my mother's rolling pin, so if it looks old like me, it's because it is old like me. Okay, so there's our dough, and it's roughly in a rectangle shape, and we're gonna roll this out to about 18 by 12. So in the interest of time, I think I'll come back when I've got this all rolled out, but I'm just going to keep going like I am till it gets there. Okay. So I did drain this. What I do is I prop it up like this and let the, all the water and the grease drain, and then scoop it out with a spoon. And it's pretty well cooled. It could be just a tad cooler, but I'm hoping it'll be okay, so I don't mess it up. Anyway, I've got my dough rolled out. You don't have to measure it, just approximately 12 by 18. And I'm gonna put this, distribute it onto the dough, and then I'm gonna spread this out. In places it'll look like it's too thin, but and remember, this has a little bit more ground beef than a pound, so if you're using an exact pound, yours might be a little shyer yet, but once you get it rolled up, there'll be plenty of meat. And I'm not going to take it all the way to the long edges, because I want to be able to seal the edges. When I do this, I usually use 90-10 ground beef, and this was 85-15, so because I think ground beef has a little bit more flavor to it. So we're just going to start with this. And this dough is generally, it's pretty easy to work with. So I'm going to notice a lot of people roll it towards themselves, which is probably the smarter thing to do, but I just, for some reason, I just can't get used to doing it that way. So I'm gonna brush just a little bit of water on this dough edge here. And I'll pull that up and over. I've got a little hole right there, but it's not really gonna matter too much. Okay. Cut off these raggedy ends like that. You can put them on the sheet and bake them if you want to. And then I'm going to cut this about in half, just so I can get it kind of even, and then I'm going to mark it off so that I get 6 out of each half. So 1, 2, 3. That was too skinny. So I'm going to remark it. So 1, 2, 3. Anyway, so I'll go like that. And I'm using a serrated knife and just kind of sawing so I don't smash the dough down when I do that. When I get them to this point, I'm just going to smash them down a smidge. Then I'll get my oven preheated and put these in the oven. My oven preheated to 425, so I'm going to put these in. Set my timer for 25 minutes, and I'll see you when they come back out. Okay, while those are in the oven, we're going to make the gravy or the white sauce. So I have 4 tablespoons of butter melting in the pan, and I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of flour. Okay, and I'm going to stir that around, kind of cook the flour for about a minute or so. And I'll add a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper again. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of milk. I'm just going to whisk that a little bit to make sure there aren't any lumps of flour left in there. And then while this thickens, I'm going to just keep stirring until it gets to a gravy consistency. Not so close. Okay, so this is about how you want it to look, about the consistency of like for biscuits and gravy. So it looks like that. You can set this aside while the roly-poly is finished cooking. And then this will thicken as it cools, so if it's too thick when you go to serve it, you can just gently warm it back up and add a little bit of milk if you need to. Okay. 20 minutes. The cooking directions are 20 to 25, but my oven runs a little hot, so I took them out a little early. one. Just spoon some of that gravy, white sauce on top. Serve it with a little bit of asparagus there. And there you have it. Now I know that the recipe has a lot of steps, but as you could see, they're all pretty simple. So you'll probably just have to try the recipe on your own, and I'll provide a typed up recipe for you.